you.
Well, thank you. Mr. General, in September, I asked for your commitment to report to this committee on how the Postal Service has substantially and substantively considered the Postal Regulatory Commission's input on national changes that are going to be made to the network and to service standards. You committed at that time to provide comprehensive responses to any PRC recommendations. But I'd just like to follow up on that, if I may, sir. Will you provide this committee with a copy of your comprehensive response to each of the PRC's recommendations when they come out? Yes or no?
I don't see why, unless there's some regulatory reason or not to. We will submit our responses to the Postal Regulatory Commission, and I think I'm happy to send you a copy of our responses.
So you'll provide that to us?
Yeah.
Appreciate it. For each PRC recommendation, you will provide a detailed explanation as to whether USPS will implement the recommendations as well?
We will answer the responses comprehensively. So, to the extent...
Including as to the degree you will implement or not.
I'm sorry?
Including the degree to which you're going to implement or not implement going forward.
So there's a specific way that we go about answering questions and that our legal department deals with, but from the standpoint of the organization as a whole, whether we submit it in that or we announce publicly what we're going to do at the same time, there will be full disclosure and transparency as to what we're going to do, what we're actually going to do.
Okay, very good. The Postal Service is required to provide, quote, prompt, reliable, and efficient service to all communities, as you're well aware. That includes rural areas. Rural Americans, like my constituents in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, rely on the Postal Service to promptly deliver Social Security checks, rent payments, all sorts of critical mail. And the Postal Service has announced service standard changes that would significantly impact rural mail. Based on the numbers the Postal Service has filed with the PRC, your plan is to slow down 68% of single-piece first-class mail in rural areas, and that compares to 34% in urban areas. You would slow down roughly 15% of rural mail and upgrade only about 3% of it. These are necessary deliveries for these communities. It would come late. So my question for you, sir, is how does this slowdown of rural mail, if implemented, comply with the Postal Service's obligation to provide service and prompt service to all communities?
So I'm not familiar with those numbers that you cite. First off, delivery of mail to rural areas and to all areas will not change, and in many cases, in a few cases, about 10 or 15% will in fact improve. Delivery is not being affected. Okay, we are talking about the collection process of single-piece first-class mail only, right? Single-piece first-class mail was 59 billion pieces 20 years ago, 23 years ago. It's down to 12 billion pieces now. And we run the same collection processes for single-piece first-class mail that drive significant cost and take up a significant amount of time in moving the overwhelming amount of volume that moves through the system. So I'm not anticipating on the delivery side, I'm not anticipating any slow. I'm anticipating improvement in the delivery times, because most mail originates within the 50-mile radius of the operations we're talking about, and it's the collection of single-piece mail going out of these areas that could be slowed down somewhere between 12 and 24 hours.
Also, service plans to reduce truck trips in areas across the country, collecting mail less often from outlying facilities and therefore reducing services. You tested this initiative in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and my constituents have now reported delays to important mail, like insurance claims, rent checks, the list goes on. There have also been delayed prescriptions, where extra days certainly matter. And cities that were sending some samples to the EPA for as a result of water testing, it requires quick turnaround. They can no longer do that because they can't rely on the Postal Service to get that mail to them on time. The USPS has said that this transportation optimization was a pilot, but my question for you is, are you planning to make that permanent up in the UP?
We're planning, so that was an initiative called Local Transportation Optimization. We rolled that out in 12 locations around the nation. Whether service, the incidents that you were speaking about consequences were related to that change or not, I cannot comment on, because there are other reasons why service fails or why expectations are not met in terms of the changing environment. There are a lot of places where we exceed in service, and part of the rationalization of the network is to meet the standard. But LTO, we went back and looked at it, and it was not consequential enough and executable enough to get the amount of cost savings that we needed, and we've changed to the more regional approach that we're taking, going forward. And that's in our filing. So the concept is the same. The area is just bigger that we're going to deal with.
When the Postal Service released its strategic plan in 2021, it called for postal reform, which was completed. It also called for executive actions to change how the Office of Personnel Management calculates Postal Service pension obligations. I sent a letter to the White House pushing for this change, and OPM simply uses outdated accounting rules for postal employees, as you know, compared to other employees. And that puts extra cost onto the Postal Service. This could be changed, and I believe could save billions of dollars while also saving pensions. So my question for you, sir, is are you still in favor of making this administrative change? And could you explain to this committee why that would be important?
So there's two areas of our pension that we are interested. One is the CSRS reallocation, when we were separated as an independent agency, from the federal government. We have calculated a significant shifting of the federal government's burden for its retirees at the time onto our balance sheet. And we have, and this is one of the things you helped us with, trying to, writing to get actually executive action to make that change, which the Office of Legal Counsel has said that that requires legislative change instead of executive change. So, but yes, we do feel the calculations show that we were overburdened when we separated from the from the government. There are other things within our retirement plan. I expect to have 610,000 people next year in our organization, and I'll have 710,000 people on my retirement plan. There are things within our investment structure that are killers, to us. This is public. This is this is enterprise services money that we have aggregated and put into the foundation. We have to invest it as with the federal government, and we don't get the the returns like a TVA or an Amtrak. That's one of the other things that we're looking to do. And then there's some other subtle magic that OPM does with their calculations that are punitive to us relative to the age group, the age calculations that they use for us. And so forth. It is a huge issue. It was 80% of our loss this year. In my projections to break even over the last 3 years, we had an additional $10 billion of bills from the federal government on our on our retirement plan that we were not expecting, and were well above the projections in the thing. It's no different than any major corporation that found themselves in these particular constraints when they had defined benefit plans. However, in some cases, they're able to raise their prices and so on and so forth, or do their investments, so it concurs with the changing marketplace. We had nothing available to us. We could not raise our prices effectively for the changes in the economy, and we could not rationally put investments with regard to meet that obligation. So it is an obligation that will continue to be detrimental to the survival of the organization.
Thank you. Ranking Member Paul, recognized for your questions.